Committee on Performance Management and Transportation Performance Management Full Fund quarterly meeting. Thank you all for being here today. A big thank you to our Vice Chair, Jean Wallace, and all of our leadership group for being here as well. And we truly could not do this without their work, without their help and support of this dedicated group of leaders. It is through their volunteerism, because AASHTO is a volunteer organization, just want to keep reminding everybody, that we can continue the member engagement and programs that we have been offering all these years. Many thanks to FHWA for their partnership with AASHTO, the Committee on Performance-Based Management, and the TPM Pool Fund members. Big thank you to Kirk Steudle for agreeing to be our keynote presenter today and taking time off his day to talk to us about the Moonshot project, something that we presented here in the Providence conference, and it was extremely well received. Last, a very special thanks to Matt Harty from AASHTO for his tireless support of the TPM community. I believe that everyone on this webinar already knows that this is Matt's last webinar as a program director for AASHTO, but more on that later in the meeting. So the purpose of these quarterly webinars is to share AASHTO and Committee on Performance-Based Management information and updates with the members and the TPM community at large. Capacity building for this is supported by the TPM Pool Fund, which is in the process of transitioning to the AASHTO Technical Service Program in the next few months. We will talk later in the meeting today about our anticipated approach and next steps for the Technical Services Program. Before we launch into the program, let me go over a few logistical reminders. Links to the notes and slides from today's web call will be posted on the TPM Pool Fund web portal at tpm-portal.com and distributed to all attendees after today's call. You can also find videos and presentations with updates from subcommittees, work groups, and the task force at this location. Please make sure you are muted, as we have great content today and want to make sure everyone can hear it without distractions. Please enter any questions or comments in the chat, unmute yourself or raise your hand if you wish to speak during the meeting today. We have a great program planned for today, and let's review our agenda. Next slide, Lori, please. So first up today, our feature presentation will cover collective and individual actions for state DOTs, envisioning and realizing the next era of America's transportation infrastructure, phase 1. Kirk Steudle from Steudle Executive Group will provide an overview of the National Cooperative Highway Research Project that spawned a new vision, aspirational goals, and spectrum of actions for transportation. He'll talk about how we can move the needle to achieve transformative changes or moonshots. He'll also cover what's next for the implementation of the research results. Following the presentation, we'll participate in a discussion that will be the first of many opportunities to provide input to this exciting and groundbreaking initiative. Following the feature presentation, I'll present a special resolution of appreciation to Matt Harty from AASHTO. After that, Matt will provide an update from AASHTO on the AASHTO Committee on Performance-Based Management Research Symposium happening next Monday from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Next, Mshadoni Smith-Jackson from FHWA will provide a FHWA update. And following Mish, we'll talk about our anticipated approach and next steps for the TSP program. Then we'll transition into our regular business meeting with the subcommittee's task force and working group updates. We'll wrap our program around 3:30 Eastern Time. All right, so with that, let's get started with our feature presentation. Kirk Steudle is an independent senior executive advisor and president of the Steudle Executive Group, focused on advancing national transportation policy, executive coaching, and integrating technology into transportation. He's a noted expert in surface transportation and a nationally recognized leader in the integration of technology into transportation and the development of connected vehicle technology. During his 31-year public employee career, he served as director of the Michigan Department of Transportation from 2006 to 2018, and recently retired as senior vice president from Econolite Systems an international traffic management and software company headquartered in California. He served as president to the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, chaired the Transportation Research Board Executive Committee, and chaired for the Intelligent Transportation Society of America Board of Directors. Kirk, a huge thank you for being here again with us today and for giving us this presentation. All yours.
Great, Christos, thanks, and thanks for that introduction. You know, every time I hear that, that just reminds me of somebody that can't say no. You know, opportunities come along and you say, hey, that sounds interesting, I'll do that. Well, for the last year, I've had the great opportunity of being the principal investigator for this NCHRP project, working along with John Koleski and Leah from Cambridge Systematics. And what started out as kind of a very nebulous scope, you know, how do we create this national vision, really has turned into a fantastic project. And frankly, from a professional perspective, one that I have been very honored to be part of. So let's just start with the title, right? Collective and individual actions state DOTs can take for realizing the next era, right? So collective and individual. So individually, different states are in different spots to be able to advance different things, but collectively we move the whole ball forward. So what's interesting is if we consider it's a national vision for transportation, you'd say, well, why shouldn't US DOT be doing this, right? Well, they should, but the political realities are that whatever came out of the current administration, there would be 25 states that would hate it. And whatever came out of the prior administration, the other 25 states would hate it, even if it was the exact same document with a different cover. So the state DOT director, commissioner, secretaries got together and under the 2024 program said, let's do this together. Let's come up with that vision. And frankly, it builds on the strategic plan that Jana Park did, and I helped her with that a couple of years ago for AASHTO. It builds on what they had already done. So it starts out, you know, a pretty daunting task when you think about it. We had the great honor to have the chair of our panel be Julie Lorenz from Kansas DOT, and most of you know Julie and know her passion, and she had a vision in her head, and this was about bringing everybody together, and we really learned a lot. Now, I'm also happy to say that we just got notified that we are approved to move into phase 2, which makes it easier for me to talk about what phase 2 might look like. And that just came yesterday. So I'm not getting my slide to advance. There we go. So this project has been referred to the moonshot, and you know, why is it the moonshot? Well, frankly, it's about getting everybody's resources aligned over a set period of time to do something that seems unachievable, right? 1962, President Kennedy says we're going to go to the moon, right? 1962, people went, how are we going to do that? But what it did was focused all the engineers, scientists, everybody towards that mission. The mission is to get to the moon. So we could coordinate all of those resources and all of the research. Oops. So as we started this project, anytime you're projecting into the future, you need to go backwards. You need to go back and say, well, what was done before and what have we accomplished since? So on the picture here, on the left side is the Transcontinental Railroad. Well, just think about being in that discussion when somebody says, hey, let's build a railroad that goes all the way across the country. Well, that's never been done before. Okay, let's do it. Let's put our resources behind it. The Panama Canal, you said, you know, there's got to be a shorter way to improve shipping. Well, let's just cut a big channel, and how about we just pick Panama? Right? So think about what people were thinking about, really big ideas. And then one that all of us can relate to, the vision of connecting the country east to west, north to south on an interstate highway system, originally for defense, but as we see it now, very much so for mobility and economic expansion. So we looked backwards, big decisions, big ideas. But then we looked at other industries at the same time. We happen to have had, and some of you were actually at this workshop that we had in Orlando at the airport. It was actually in the brand new terminal, very fitting. Well, we brought in other experts. So we looked at Disney, right? We're in Florida. Let's look at Disney. And, you know, if you go back and see what was Epcot, that's the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. And we said, well, okay, well, how did they imagine and how did they think about the future? And then we looked at the energy sector and we said, well, what are they doing? How are they looking at this? And what can we learn from them? We looked at 10 different trends and uncertainties, and we did some really good work. And I'll really give a shout out to John Koleski and the Cambridge team. Really did a deep dive on these trends. So each one of these, we looked at demographics, prosperity, the future of work, trade, logistics, regions, communities, technology, energy, risk, and governance system. We look at all of those, did a really nice, one pager on each one of those, and pulled data that was developed by other external sources. We just pulled them all together and said, look, here's what's happening and what should we be thinking about to the future. So I'm gonna just highlight a couple of these. So one of them was the growing and changing population. So more seniors than children by the mid 2030s. And I would suggest for all of you on the call here that are millennials and Gen Xers waiting for the boomers to get out of the way. Well, look, it's coming, right? The boomers are about to get out of the way. And I'm kind of the end of the boomer. So, we're stepping out of the way but here's the population trends. Here's what it looks like into the future. Now, we also looked at where everybody was going and how it was shifting. We don't have that particular slide here, but really looked at all of the increases in population across the country. One really interesting piece was prosperity and the fact that who are we leaving behind? And these numbers had just a profound impact on the state DOT, the secretary, commissioner, directors that were there when you realize 13% of households are below the poverty line. And almost 30% of the population are what we call ALICE, asset limited, income constrained, and employed. These are the working poor, right? 30% of the population of the United States falls into that category. So if you think about that problem, well, okay, many of you would say, well, transportation can't solve poverty, but we can solve the transportation components that contribute to it. You'll hear a little bit more about that coming up in a minute. But look at the, the numbers for broadband and internet access to food, shortage of healthcare professionals, and you really start seeing a whole different picture about what the future might look like. We looked at technology, 2.5 quintillion bytes of data per day in 2020, 64 billion connected IoT devices in 2025, 360 billion in AI, in the AI market by 2028. And since this program was done, what's come about? The AI chat one, and I'm forgetting the name at the moment, that is really changing a lot. And that's been, frankly, in the last month. And that wasn't even part of our discussions. So if you just look at all of these technologies, right, where are they going? Human technology, green technology, consumer technology. It was in 2006, we didn't have smartphones. Well, how long ago was that? 16 years, right? So now you're projecting 16 years ahead. It's likely something's going to be very common in our lives that hasn't even been introduced to the market yet. I'll bet it's been invented. It's sitting in somebody's laboratory somewhere. These are risks. This happens to be a graph of the water supply sustainability risk index. You know, where's water an issue? Now, this is from a couple of years ago, and it's 2014. And if you look what happens this winter, there's a lot of water coming. But are we going to be able to capture that? And it's not going to drastically change the drought conditions over long term. But if you look at the things that are most important to the general public, that's that climate action failure. And again, remember those demographics of who's concerned about what. Those environmental issues are really, really big. You know, extreme weather. We are certainly seeing that this year. So I mentioned that we had a retreat in Orlando in March of last year, and we had 80 people attend. 19 of them were DOT director, secretary, commissioner levels. 19 of them. The others all came from a whole host of partners. Now, some of these are traditional partners that we work with on a routine basis, but if you look at these logos, there's many that we do not interact with because maybe they have a different opinion of transportation than we do. Maybe we've been at odds with them forever. We said, let's bring them in and let's have a conversation. Now, what was really interesting is you talk to both groups, the DOT folks thought, okay, we're going to come in and these groups are just going to pound on us about what we don't do and what we should do, blah, blah, blah. And if you talk to the other 60 plus non-traditional partners, they were expecting to come to a meeting and the DOTs were going to tell them what they already do and what the vision was going to be. And then the DOTs were going to check off a box to say, yep, we talked to them, and they were going to move on. Well, we purposefully asked the DOT leaders to listen more than they talk. And they did. And many of them came away with a completely different appreciation for what was going on. So if you look at some of these partners, right, the National Resource Defense Council, Florida Power and Light, the Eastern Transportation Coalition, one we always talk to, United for Alice, right? This is the United Way. This is the piece that deals with the homeless side. NextNav, Beep, those are future technology companies. Space Florida, we actually took a trip to Cape Canaveral and looked at what was happening and what Space Florida was doing in that space. And then you have the Reason Foundation and you have the Nature Conservancy. You have Berkeley. We had a very, very diverse group of partners that came together. And frankly, while this wasn't one of the primary focuses of the research, what we found as most valuable was these partners, and we've called them the Challenge Network, because whatever we come up with, we ask these folks, challenge us. Does this make sense? And frankly, at that retreat, they all said, you all can do more. We hear what you're saying, we understand that, but you can do more. And they kind of challenged and pushed back. And we've continued to update them as we've moved forward. And as we roll into the second phase, we will be really engaging them in the conversations as well. So we end up with a vision that was approved unanimously at the AASHTO Board of Directors in October. Now, think of that, a national vision approved unanimously by all state DOTs. So that means it had to fit in Texas, Florida, California, Washington State, and Maine. So think of that diverse group, right? We have to find some way to move through all of that. And what we agreed at the end was this statement: a transportation system focused on connecting communities, moving people and goods, and meeting customer needs at all scales, from very local to global, delivered in a partnership between states and other public and private and civic partners, saying, let's do this together. Okay, what is, those are good words, but what does that really mean? The last thing we wanted to do was create a vision statement that just sits on a shelf, because then it was, okay, well, why'd you waste the money doing that? So we took this vision and we said, well, let's put some aspirational goals around it. So here they are: safe and secure, accessible, affordable, seamless and reliable, healthy and thriving, clean and sustainable, agile and resilient. Each of those have more details below them, but I want you to take particular attention to the top one: safe and secure. Now, notice it doesn't say safety. Many times it says safety, and when you hear the word safety, you immediately think of traffic safety. It's very important. This says safe because as we met with all of the regional AASHTO boards last summer, one of the big issues that was coming forward was human trafficking, and it was using the transportation network in advancing human trafficking. They said, we need to, that has to be part of our safe. So that's why it's not safety, it's safe, because it's all encompassing of making it safe. So we have these goals, and then we said, well, okay, well, how are we going to get there? I remember that moonshot where President Kennedy says, we're going to go to the moon, we're going to align resources. So we actually came up with about 7 moonshots. We only have 3 of them here. These were the 3 that were really worked out the most. They're still draft. When we get to phase 2, we're going to be really honing in on what should this be. So this was an initial piece. And it says, well, what if we make aggressive progress towards Vision Zero? Look, I've been in the transportation world for 36 years. We have been talking about safety, safety, safety. For a long time, the numbers were going down. Everybody here knows the numbers are going in the wrong direction, and we need national attention. We need to focus on how do we get this down. Now, what we said is, well, maybe we can have an interim goal. The vision is still 0, but maybe we could say in 10 years from now, we want to reduce fatalities to a post-World War II level, right? This is just a draft. We're going to dive into a lot of this, a lot more in phase 2 to say, well, what should those numbers really be? But just imagine, what if we said, let's use all of our engineering technology, all our behavioral issues, and our design to really make aggressive push towards 0. Here's another one that we said, well, what if we work with partners to reduce the share of homeless or households that can't afford the basic survival costs? This is the Alice population. And frankly, what we got from one state DOT leader that resonated across the board as we were talking with them individually, because we had individual conversation with all 52 DOT secretary, commissioner, directors. They said, we can't solve poverty. Transportation cannot solve this problem. But you know what? What if transportation was never the reason that somebody was in this situation? That we can address. That we can put our efforts towards and say, let's make sure that everybody can get to work. Now, look, there's lots of reasons why people are poor or homeless. But the goal is, let's take transportation as an excuse off the table. Okay, there's something that we can work on. And the last moonshot I'm going to share with you is, well, what if we change how we operate and manage the system? And frankly, this was coming off of an international panel about ITS. And they said, well, what if we light up the interstates and use them as corridors for broadband and for next generation technology? What if we really think about how do we use this right away in a much better and different manner? What would that look like? So there's been a lot of traction. Actually, last fall, there was a lot of traction about lighting up the interstates. And as we start to roll with phase 2, in my mind, this one is actually the furthest along to actually get kicked off and move forward. But there'll be lots more discussion about what does that look like? What exactly does it mean? We don't have all those answers yet. That's going to come out in phase 2, because lighting up the interstate means different things to different people. As I interviewed 4 DOT secretaries, they all had a different perspective of what that meant. So part of phase 2 will be, okay, let's kind of agree. What should we have here? So we have these moonshots. And now we get to the meat of this. Okay, so what actions can state DOTs take on an individual basis to advance this vision together? So we came up with some actions. We call them levers of change. Externally, partnerships, communications, land use coordination, mega region coordination. Internally, policies, regulations, plans, programs, asset management, investments, technology, human resources, and governance. So these are things that can be worked on at states. I will guarantee you there is no state that can do all of these, because frankly, politically, they won't be able to do certain things, but that's okay. They can work on the things that they can work on at that point in time. Somebody else will be able to work on other pieces. That's the beauty of how this was developed, was allow every state to see themselves some way and advance the issues that they can, that are most important to them. So what does that look like? So it's going from a modest change, and in this particular case, asset management of the right-of-ways, maintain them in a state of good repair, identify vulnerabilities. I would hope that by now, every single state is doing that, right? Well, what if the transformative change is really to look strategically at all that right-of-way and say, is this the best use? How do we renew what's there? Do we repurpose it? Do we decommission it? Think about that. Do we decommission assets because the needs have changed? Really looking strategically at that asset, and think about how transformative that would be. And think about that conversation I had before about energy. Okay, is there other ways to use that right away that maybe is used for energy generation? I don't know. So we're going to dive into this in phase 2 a bit more, Colin. So is it increasing the emphasis on community values in the planning process? Hopefully everybody is doing that, but if you're not, that's a modest change. Maybe the transformative is redesigning the entire planning process with the community's vision at the center, right? Okay, that's a big step. That means being able to let go a little bit and guide a process, transformative. And I know that some of you and some of the states you're in are really probably already doing this. So here's the list of levers of change over here. And this could be a typical scorecard for, it says state A. So the scorecard says, you know what, we really do a good job of transformative measures and partners and in policy regulation and in technology and data. And, we really can't do much in land use or organization and governance. And maybe politically, maybe the regulatory, they can't, right? But it's a good snapshot. And now they look and say, you know what? We could do more in multi-state coordination. We could move that lever. Well, the neighboring state, their scorecard might look like this. And this is a self-scorecard. This is not one that would be collected, nationwide. It's not intended for that at all. It's intended for the leadership of that organization to look and say, where's our opportunities to move forward? Instead of saying, oh, there's just too much, we just can't do any of this, and then just move on. And state C might look like this. Now, maybe they're doing some really good human resource practices, but they have some other places that they can move as well. And you combine, or look at them side by side. Yep, they're all over the board. That's what I expect. That's what it's going to look like. So what's next? So as I mentioned, we're going to be kicking off phase 2 here in a couple of weeks. We're going to continue the engagement with the partners in the Challenge Network. That has proven very, very useful. I expect that we're going to be even bringing those challenge networks. I think states are going to take that and say, well, what kind of challenge network can I develop in my state? How can I pull the people in and into a meaningful conversation as opposed to just giving them lip service? We're going to be advancing the Moonshots, and we're going to be looking for demonstration projects. And the number one question I get is there going to be money associated with the demonstration projects? There will be, we suspect there will be money in other pots. There's not in this particular NCHRP project, but we're looking to identify where those pots of money are, right? There's a lot of discretionary grants. Maybe there's a collaborative effort of multi-states to come together. Maybe there's some other pooled funds that we can pull together as well. And then we're going to be doing a deeper dive into those levers of change at the end, and really getting people's input as to what does transformational change look like in each one of those areas. And ideally, let's just take the partnership one. We may end up with 10 different examples of what transformational change looks like in dealing with partners. Maybe there are multiple levels of partners or different type partners, so that we can provide a potential roadmap for all of the states to move forward. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I would be happy to take any questions that you all might have. And Christos, I'm going to leave you to be the time moderator of when we need to move on. But I think it was at quarter after the hour. So, or Lori, whoever wants to be that.
I think Christos delegated that to me.
Yes.
All right.
So please, thank you, Kirk. That was great. I know a lot of the states are interested in the project and kind of the overall results. I do want to remind people that if you want to get other perspectives on this, we did have Kirk and we had Julie and some other people come and talk about this at the Providence conference. And if you go to the TPM portal, tpm-portal.com, we have all of their presentations available, along with recordings of them sort of giving those presentations and the overall discussion that took place there. So there were a couple questions that kind of came in online. The first one is from Daniela. The question is, who is supporting or sponsoring the resulting actions? Is this sort of an AASHTO commitment to some degree?
That's a great question, Daniela. And so this is being supported at the executive level within AASHTO. So all the state DOT director, secretary, commissioners. We had individual conversations in the fall where we would do an individual briefing, and a CEO would come in and say, I want my leadership team to hear this and engage. And they started really diving in. Phase 2 is going to include some deep dives, some real deep dives in 8 to 10 states, those that raise their hand and say, we really want to figure out how to do this. And frankly, from my perspective, being around that AASHTO table, once we get a couple to step forward and say, I want to do this, and then they walk out and say, here's how you can do it, we will end up with more that will come along. And many of you know that and have seen that before. So some of those actions that I talk about, the moonshots, like lighting up the interstate, look, there's not $100 million sitting here that we can just dole out to, 5 states to go do something. But there are other funding opportunities that we can bring states together and say, okay, let's help coordinate what you would do, and let's put in that application to get those additional funds. Now, at the same time, we are also working on some other implementation funds that we would be able to maybe dive a little bit deeper than what the NCHRP project is asking for.
Great, thanks. She also had, I guess, a question. I'm not sure if you can see that, Kirk, in the chat, but about the challenge networks. You might have mentioned that. I mean, like right now it's at the executive level, but then, who might you start working with at the SME level for the AASHTO committees and kind of pushing it down in some way?
Yeah, and again, Daniela, as usual, spot on question. And it's at the CEO level, but the next vision is, okay, well, how do we bring this in, or how does the state bring in the planning director or whomever's the appropriate one into that discussion, so it doesn't just stay at the CEO level. It has to get down to the career staff, the people that frankly make it happen, which is all of you, and then start realizing, okay, here's what we can do. So frankly, it starts with recognizing at the top level this is important, which I think really helps set the stage. So I see that diving in deeper And I truly expect that there will be a handful of states that say, you know, I just can't move forward with this, you know, politically, whatever, that's going to happen. But there will be a number that will say, I want to go deeper, because we've already seen that, already heard that. And
Right.
to your point, Matt, about other AASHTO committees, there's been requests from other AASHTO committees to learn more about it. In fact, Tuesday of this week, I gave a very similar presentation to the AASHTO Executive Institute, which has your senior deputy directors in attendance. There's about 25 states there, and they were very interested and engaged as well. So it's a continual push to let people know what's out there, and then, okay, now how do we get people involved?
I guess a question that I'm kind of interested in, as other people sort of type their questions in the chat, being a director at Michigan DOT, kind of knowing how NCHRP works and projects within AASHTO, how do you ensure the continuity and sort of a champion of pushing this forward? Because I know that my last day is tomorrow, but I've been here, almost 13 years. I've seen some projects when Susan was president, the 7 $1 million projects, kind of get a lot of initial oomph, but then, some stuff hasn't continued. So any thoughts in terms of how we ensure like there are champions that are going to carry this project forward, knowing that, Julie was a huge champion of this, but then she, left Kansas DOT, went to the private sector. So who carries the water kind of thing?
Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm glad you mentioned Julie, because that's the example that I was going to give, right? She was the champion of this, but I will tell you, she continues to be a champion because she really, really believes in it. Now, the trouble is she's not a state DOT leader. There are a number of state DOT leaders that are, I think, ready to stand up and take that mantle and continue to push. I know that on the 2024 committee, while there isn't a specific person, as I hear each of them talk in public, I hear them talk about the Vision Project and the Moonshots and continuing the momentum. So I think one will emerge, or multiples will emerge.
Okay.
So Marie had a very good question I'd like to address.
Yeah, that's right. I was going next. And I asked Marie if you wanted to come on camera and talk about it or not, but if not, you see the question also there, Kirk.
Yeah, so this is and I'm glad you asked that question, Marie, because we had considerable conversations about, well, what does this mean, right? And what does a community focus mean? And if you note in that definition, it said at all scales, from local to global. So when you're dealing with a very local project, right, it's something very small, the neighborhood groups are all there, that's your community you're dealing with, right? And what's happening 3 states over is irrelevant, right? Or frankly, even in the next county. But as it grows from a local project, very local, to a regional, to a mega regional, to a global project, now you're working, let's just say on a global scale, you're doing truck movements or goods movement out of a port. Okay, well, then that community is different, right? That community is then the users of that port. So we very carefully worded that so that it didn't do exactly what you're saying, that it's just a continual focus on interstates. No, it's what's the community that's impacted, and understanding, even if it's a really very local project, but the community drives through it, well, that community that drives through it has a voice as well.
And just to speak very candidly, after having worked at a DOT and been on AASHTO committees and then done about 44 NCHRP and SHARP projects, what would be visionary at this point is shifting our capacity funding entirely this decade, so that we achieve the 50% pollution reduction by 2030 that the Biden administration set out initially. And then, frankly, our frontline communities and all of us in many polluted communities, need for health reasons. If health was calculated, this would have been disallowed a long time ago. And 20 to 40% of the people in each community don't or can't drive or shouldn't be driving. Maybe they're driving illegally or, you know, beyond their capacity. And what I'm seeing is that even though we have wonderful programs we've developed here and there, that and even though, you know, yes, we need to spend a ton on maintenance in Colorado, we could spend a lot more on our rural roads. I'm all for that. But for our capacity funding, we need to shift off highways this decade. And that would help us achieve Vision Zero, help us make the GHG reductions. And as long as we are obscuring or letting the existing system, as much as, you know, we've all been a part of it, but continue this decade, we're actually not dealing with the accumulated equity differences, the health problems, or the GHG reductions we need, and we are continuing the old system.
So let me address a couple of things. One, this is about moving people and freight, and it is many modes, and it is allowing states, locals to deal with issues that they can address in their individual states. And in some cases, they will be able to do exactly what you're talking about, Marie. And it was allowing them the flexibility to do it. But there are other cases where they will not be able to do that. And so that the option is we just sit back and nothing happens, or we enable those that can move and those that can't move in other areas at the same time. That's the piece that was very sensitive about coming up with this vision. There was lots of discussion that said, well, it needs to say this. Okay, but if it says this, then you're going to lose a whole bunch of support. Well, then, and then the other says, well, it needs to say this. Okay, well, then you're going to lose support elsewhere. So it was intentionally crafted to allow states to maneuver within it to solve the issues in their areas, their regions, within the bounds of their political systems. So, you know, will we have a magic wand and say, this is what we're going to do? The political realities is, okay, we're probably not going to go anywhere. So, but I appreciate your comments very much so.
Kirk, I'll take Chair's prerogative as the last question. You know how excited I got about this project when John Kaliski reached out to me some time ago. And really the synergies that I saw with something that we were working out of the World Road Association and the technical committee over there. So, but some of these moonshots that we are looking for in the United States address challenges that they are not necessarily just US challenges, they are global challenges. So how do we see these really taking it to the next level where we start looking at this at the international level after the national level?
Wow, Christos, talk about moonshots. I think that's a Mars shot. But you know what? So if I think about how would that happen, right? Right now, I'm happy that we can get 52 DOTs talking that maybe can move one nation ahead. I do think that the conversation about bringing lots of people into discussion and people actually listening as much as they talk, this is all parties, is one, if we can make a concerted effort towards, here's what we really want to get to, and not come in with a specific agenda, which is what that retreat was set up for. I think there's a way to move into that, and I could see that as a future. I don't want to say phase to this because it would certainly be much more complicated, but I think there's a way to begin that conversation. But I do think we have to have our own house in order before we can start saying, hey, you know, maybe somebody else should do this as well.
Fully agree with you, and but hopefully this is an area where we can actually take a leadership role in bringing those voices together as well. And at the same time of sharing what we know, also listening to them and understanding some of the solutions that they might be finding. So I'm looking at the time, and given the agenda that we have, I want to thank Kirk for this great presentation and discussion and all the things that they are being brought forward. This is not by any means the last opportunity that people would have to hear about this project and to comment. But I also want to thank Julie Lorenz and John Kaliski for all of the work that they have done on this project. And as we discussed during the Providence Conference last December, this is something that PR's Technical Committee 1.1 on the performance of transport administration is also investigating, and we are looking to organize hopefully a joint workshop at the next World Road Congress this coming October. So Kirk, huge thank you. I know you have to run, so hopefully we kept to the program, and huge appreciation again as well.
Yes, and it was a great pleasure to talk with all of you. I hope we can do this again and dive a bit deeper. And I know Marie had some comments in the chat. If one of you could capture that, of Matt or Christoph, so if you could capture that and send that to me, I'll make sure that that gets interjected into the discussions as we go forward.
Absolutely. And in addition to Marie's comments, also other comments that, as people start to digest all of this and they come up with ideas and questions, we'll capture everything and forward it.
Good. Although I will give a shout out to John and Leah. I suspect they've already gotten them written down and they've already got them in our notes. So again, thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure to be with you. And frankly, at this point in my career, I'm excited about where we might be able to take this, and we might actually be able to make some progress going forward. So thanks, everybody. Excellent.
Thank you, Kirk. So with that, I would like to take some time out of this agenda today to recognize a dear friend and an integral member of our transportation performance management family, who after 13 years as our staff liaison and program director at AASHTO is moving back to the private sector to continue his career there. When I went through a whirlwind of emotions when Matt first told me of his decision to pursue other opportunities, that it's actually difficult to try and describe them all. I know a lot of us at the leadership group had the very same feelings. But the one thing for sure is the tremendous gratitude and appreciation that we as a group have, and me personally, for Matt as a person and as a friend, and not just as our AASHTO staff liaison all these years. For all these years, he has led the way as we blazed a great trail when it comes to asset management, performance management, risk management, system performance, now resilience, you name it, you can actually find Matt's name and contributions carved on it. He's truly being a pioneer in pushing our transportation community towards the implementation of performance management and supporting us in all of our state DOTs and bringing different people together, listening to the different perspectives when we're going through the policies and reviewing all the new performance rules that they were out there, and allowing for all these different perspectives and the different voices in our AASHTO committees and subcommittees to be heard and feel valued. Many times you heard me describe our community and our committee as a family, and part of the reason that we have been a family is because of the culture that Matt has cultivated as the AASHTO lead in our committees. As Matt is switching hats after tomorrow, the Committee on Performance-Based Management would like to acknowledge his many contributions to the transportation field and the progress of the committee with the following resolution, which I will ask our Secretary Karen Miller of Missouri DOT to read for us. Karen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So resolution of appreciation presented to Matthew Holland Hardy, PhD of AASHTO. Whereas Dr. Hardy has faithfully served the AASHTO Committee on Performance-Based Management for the past 13 years. Whereas Matt, in his role as Program Director for Planning and Performance Management, is recognized for outstanding initiative and success in exceeding expectations and results. Whereas Matt's impact to national transportation will be experienced for decades, especially due to his leadership through the first set of national performance measures implemented from MAP 21. Whereas Matt, through continuous efforts and insights, has advanced transportation agencies nationwide in their practices of asset management, organizational management, performance management, risk management, and system mobility. Whereas Matt has facilitated critical connections amongst the national and international transportation communities through his leadership in planning, developing, and supporting conferences and meetings which brought together diverse stakeholders for robust discussions. Whereas Matt's influence is recognized beyond the arena of performance management and has benefited state departments of transportation as well as the transportation sector of the United States. Now, therefore, be it resolved, we, the leadership of the Committee on Performance-Based Management, extend our sincere appreciation and gratitude to Dr. Hardy for his outstanding service and contributions. Be it further resolved that we extend our most hearty congratulations on his next adventure in life and wish him the best in years to come.
Just where I'm supposed to say something, Christos?
Yes. Thank you, Karen. Will Matt?
I've got 7 minutes to 2:30. No, I could talk forever. No, this has been, I really appreciate the resolution of appreciation. I wasn't gonna cry. Everybody's a friend. I appreciate you all. I think we've done great work. I started here nearly 13 years ago. I learned about the 3C process, the planning process. It's a continuous, cooperative, comprehensive, and that's what I come back to when I think about performance management and where we were, 13 years ago with my first AASHTO board meeting, trying to argue among the states about, can we have a resolution that supports the implementation of performance management? And I mean, that was an eye opener for me. And look where we are now. It's sort of a given. But it's a continuous process, right? It's a journey that we're on, and it didn't end with anything. It's going to keep on going. We're going to keep on evolving. We're going to keep on improving. It's all about cooperation. That this is a community. Somebody said sharing is caring. I guess that's my thing. We need to share with each other. Even though I work at AASHTO, it's not just about the state DOTs, I don't believe. It's about all the transportation agencies, players, the MPOs, the locals, the states. We're all in it together. I don't believe we can do this by ourselves. It has to be everybody. It has to be that sort of cooperative nature. And then it has to be comprehensive. We're not looking at just, the technicalities of moving, vehicles or a VMT type measure. It's about accessibility. It's about, safety. It's about all, everything, right? It's very much, comprehensive in nature, about not just sort of going down one little rabbit hole or anything like that. So I come back to, from a very technical perspective of, that sort of 3C process. It still resonates with me. And as I said, I consider everybody that I've interacted with a great friend. I appreciate all of you. Still be my friend when I go. I started Spy Pond Partners on April 10th. I'm going to take 2 weeks off. Christos, I love you, brother. And Kirk, I think, was the first chair when I came here. So it was great to see Kirk here. I still remember meetings that we had in Chicago and everything, kind of getting performance management started with Daniela was there and Mayor Campbell was there, and we're debating lots of stuff and lots of roll up our sleeves, technical discussions. It was just great. It just inspired me and everything. But it's time to kind of move on. I'm looking forward to new opportunities. I will never forget anything that I learned here or in my role. It's something very, very special to me, and I will always remember it. So I guess with that, thank you, Christos. Thank you to the Committee on Performance-Based Management, all the states, the private sector, everybody. So just, thank you very much. I'm not going far. Next time I'll just be in my basement again,
Thank you, Matt. You know that I speak for all of us when I say that you always be considered a member of Transportation Performance Management family, no matter where you are. And as the chair of the Committee on Performance-Based Management, it was really good. I didn't realize that Kirk was the very first chair, even before I got involved in performance management. While I'm saddened to lose such an extraordinary person as the partner at AASHTO, as a friend, I'm happy to see you continuing your growth and to see the next steps in your career. So, and I look forward to continuing to work together in our different capacities, and definitely at the annual Hearty TRB Fiesta. So, best wishes from all of us for a continued bright future, and we know you're not going to be going far away. So, all right, Lori. Okay, so moving on, because we do move on. If there's one thing that we know is that leadership updates and opportunities. Before we get into the agency updates, just want to take a few minutes to let our participants on the call today about some leadership updates and vacancies from the Committee on Performance-Based Management and our subcommittees and working groups. Because we are looking for people to be engaged. We are a volunteer organization and we rely on people volunteering their talent. So, and one of those, Ryan Huff from Nebraska DOT, did such an outstanding job, running the conference in Rhode Island as the lead for the workforce development and training, working group that we decided, he volunteered to also take on and co-chair with Paul Dex, the policy and rulemaking, coordinating work group. At the same time, our organizational management subcommittee, it's bringing on two co-vice chairs, David Potts from Iowa DOT and Jihan El-Said from West Virginia DOT, which with Gary Van Such taking the lead role as the chair of the committee. We still have some leadership vacancies in the professional development working group now that Ryan is moving on. But this particular one actually does come with a promise that Ryan will still help with the organization of our annual meeting, which we're going to talk about it a little bit later on. And also on the joint subcommittee on system mobility and emerging technologies, Daniela is still looking for a vice chair for that subcommittee as well. And if you are interested in any of these positions, please contact me or Jean Wallace, our vice chair, and let us know. Or in Smith's case, also Daniela. Next slide, please. And talking about the annual business meeting, Gary and William, thank you very much for Colorado DOT's willingness to host us there. Working with Gary, and we identified that Monday, September 11th to Wednesday, September 13th, the training facilities are open, and that's a good time frame for all of us to be there. So please mark your calendar and plan on joining us as we are looking to continue working towards updating that. So more details to follow on that in the very near future. So, as we begin the planning process for that, we'll be looking again for people that they are interested in being part of the professional development group. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to give his final AASHTO update.
All right, I guess the final AASHTO update. So thanks, Christos. I'm going to share my screen real quick. I know FHWA is going to talk about this, but I'll just sort of from a policy sort of, oops. This kind of helps me talk about stuff. There we go. Some of the policy things. So there's a lot going on at AASHTO. We had our Washington briefing a few weeks ago, where we had congressional representatives, we had staffers and everything kind of come in and talk about, you know, surface transportation, air, water transportation, lots of things kind of going on. If you weren't able to make it, I'm not sure we did some recordings of some of our knowledge sessions, like little summaries. We had a technical knowledge session on decarbonization. We had a session talking about land use and how states, DOTs can get more involved in kind of land use. And one on EV planning, electric vehicle planning, with all the funding available for it. So it was a good meeting. And then upcoming in May is when we have our AASHTO spring meeting. So that's coming up. We're planning for that one. It's going to be in Seattle, Washington. Roger Millar is the current AASHTO president, and then we are working on his presidential emphasis areas: a resilient transportation system that is safe, sound, and smart. That's his focus. So many of the AASHTO committees are kind of looking at doing activities that relate to a safe transportation system. To that end, we are having a transportation safety summit that's going to be October 17th through the 19th. 3 committees are coming together: planning, active, and safety. And they're going to be having their business meetings. The first day and a half of those 3 days is going to be more of a national safety summit, looking at what we can do, what the states can do, and partnering to address the serious and significant transportation safety issue here within the U.S. That's coming up. We haven't firmed up. We have the dates firmed up, the 17th to the 19th. We do not have a location firmed up yet. Hopefully in the next couple of days, they'll figure that out. And I think so. A lot going on. So it's a safe system. It's a sound system. So from that perspective, a lot of the work that the Asset Management Subcommittee is doing, looking at asset management principles, and just improving the asset management program systems and everything in the state DOTs, kind of addressing that second area of Roger's a resilient transportation system. And then finally, a system that is smart, looking at technology, looking at CAV. And I know here at AASHTO, King G is kind of leading lots of our efforts related to connected and automated vehicles and getting those technologies deployed to help improve safety, among other things as well. So that's sort of what's happening with Roger's area, and this committee through our subcommittees are supporting Roger's emphasis area. The last thing that I'll sort of mention talks about policy, right? And there's rumor out there that well, there was the GHG, the greenhouse gas emissions notice of proposed rulemaking that came out last year, and this is the Matt Hardy sort of analysis, crystal ball, magic 8 ball, whichever one you want to know or use. I suspect that they are finalizing that now, given all the public comment and input that came into that. My belief, kind of what I read is that needs to be finalized, and then other important regulations can be finalized as well that kind of touch upon it. To me, there are sort of 3 regulations that really are kind of, are connected to each other. And if you make one change in one of them, you'll probably have to make slight changes in the other one. So the first one is the CFR Part 490, which are your performance management provisions. That's the new ones that came out of MAP 21. There's Part 450, which is the existing metropolitan statewide planning regulations. They're now performance-based. So if you change or if you add performance measures or aspects to that, you're going to have to change Part 450 as well. And then finally, there's CFR Part 515, which are the asset management plan regulations. So all 3 of those are kind of up here, but the first one is that GHG emissions, that's going to have to be updated, or actually written, new parts of it likely written. They're going to have to update, this is FHWA, update Part 490, and there's requirements from IIJA that they're going to have to just kind of update and make administrative changes, technical corrections, or technical changes that don't really change the inherent nature of the regulation, but they still have to be updated. For example, the bridge terminology replacing structurally deficient with in poor condition, just making some consistency there. And then what I call the IIJA/bill sort of general cleanup. Number 3 there is the planning regulations, both metropolitan and statewide. So the language in IIJA talking about housing and transportation linkages, optional, but will have to be included in there. And again, these are performance-based Part 450 incorporates the performance-based planning approaches, which tie into those performance management provisions from parts 490 and as well as 515 with the asset management plan requirements. So you're going to probably see some updates there. And then the transportation asset management plans, that has to be updated, address resilience, risk, extreme weather, and some other sort of general cleanup. And then lastly, we saw this late last year with some of the NHTSA regulations, is this sort of connection between the FHWA safety sort of components and the NHTSA safety components, and this sort of conflict between 3 of the, what we call the 3 common safety measures, and just trying to sort through how that's going to be cleaned up. There were some inconsistencies, I guess, created by IIJA, which has to be addressed in some way. We believe. So that's the other kind of area to kind of, look at and, make sure something's is being addressed. So those from a policy sort of AASHTO update, that's kind of what's going on there. Don't forget about these things once I leave. I'm sure you won't. And I think with that, I don't know at this point, in terms of somebody, if you're interested if you're interested in a job, I hear there's an opening at AASHTO. But if you have questions or anything, I'll put my email address that you can contact me. I'm not going far. Happy to talk about stuff. And if you have questions about the committee, historically, whatever, that kind of knowledge, let me know. I'm not, again, I'm friendly. And I don't know who the person is at this point who's going to replace me or anything. But I will put contact information for 2 other people as well if you need to reach somebody at AASHTO. So with that, that's all I got. Happy to try to answer questions. I'll turn it back over to you, Christos.
Thank you, Matt. In the interest of time, I'm gonna turn it over to Mish for the Federal Highway update. And just a quick one that before I do that is that we are working with AASHTO leadership, in this transition period. So we'll have more information to everybody hopefully soon. So Mish.
Thanks, Christos. Matt, I actually wasn't going to talk about any of those things. In fact, the GHG and PRM, when it closed in October, we've been working on addressing those comments. That's the only item on that list that we are actively pursuing. So hopefully that will be coming out soon. I don't know, I can't measure soon in actual time, but soon is the time frame that we're working on. As soon as possible, we're working very hard to get that done. But I did want to provide just some really quick updates from the PMF and the TPM process. Again, thanking all of you for working with us this cycle, all of the delays and the challenges that we had with the data and getting all of the information in. The PMF has closed and we are prepping for the dashboard updates, and we're still planning for that to go into effect in July. We also just completed our first round of 2023 TAM regional calls earlier today with all 4 regions. And at the end of this month, we will have all of the recertification letters out to the state DOTs for their bill compliant TAM plan updates. I did want to mention that there are some new resilience related courses available through NHI, climate change, adaptation, and resiliency. I think there are about 4 of them. You could check out their webpage and see if any of those courses are of interest to you. They're hot off the presses. I think today is the first day they've been up on their webpage, so check that out. And for those of you that are a part of the HPMS community, there was a Talking HPMS webinar Tuesday, I want to say, And if you did not participate in that webinar, but you are a part of that community, there is a recording, and I would recommend you go ahead and take a look at that. And internally, we are starting to kind of think about what lessons we've learned from this first cycle through the TPM and asset management first cycle. And that kind of leads to my last update item. March 30th, TRB is hosting a webinar called Successes and Challenges, the First 4 Years of Federal Performance Management. It's a shameless plug. Some of our friends are going to be presenting on their successes and challenges, and I'll be moderating that session. So join us March 30th. TRB is hosting, and hopefully see you there.
Thank you very much, Mish. Any questions for Mish from anyone? Other than the one that I had. Mish, are the NHI courses free, like the ones when we Federal Highway first roll out asset management and performance management?
That's my understanding. They're also web-based. So these are not in-person courses, they're web-based courses. So I can try and put a link in the chat to that information.
Perfect. Thank you, Mish. Any other questions for either Matt or for Mish?
Mish, I guess I forgot. What was the data you're going to publish the MP at the GHG final rule? Sorry, I had to do it one last time. That's
I'm not
all.
going public with that until after the 24th. That's what we
Okay.
agreed.
Oh, not fair, not fair. Thanks, Mish.
Thank you, Mish. Okay, so back to our program. So the next, we'll touch on the Transportation Pool Fund and TSP. So as we have mentioned in the past, the Transportation Pool Fund that has been supporting all of these activities, including this quarterly webinar for the last few years, is coming to an end over the next few months. But back in FY 2022, Matt worked with the leadership of AASHTO to set up the Transportation Services Program that was designed to replace the pool fund. And it's active. States have already been contributing. And the one thing I want to assure everybody is that just because the pool fund is closing, it doesn't mean that services are going away. If anything, not only we hope that we'll be able to continue what we are doing, but increase the number of activities and level of support that our technical subcommittees get. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that all the states sign up as a member of the TSP, at least for the basic services, which is what allows us to provide this programming. If you have any questions about how to do that, please let us know through the chat and we will follow up with you. In the next few weeks, the leadership of the Committee on Performance-Based Management, that is the steering group for the AASHTO TSP, will be meeting to draft recommendations to AASHTO on how to allocate the funding in the TSP to support these activities. So, and with that, unless anybody has any questions, we're gonna move into our Committee on Performance-Based Management business meeting to get some updates from our subcommittees and working group. So you're gonna hear this probably from a number of us as we go through it, because this is very important. A reminder that on Monday afternoon from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, the Committee on Performance-Based Management is holding a research symposium, and I hope that everyone is able to be there because in order for us to be able to continue advancing the level of knowledge and expertise through our agencies, we must have a robust research program that continuously moves us forward. We need you there, and we need your ideas and your energy if we are going to do this. With that, let me introduce his chair. We will provide their respective activities. And first, we'll go to the policy and rulemaking, and Paul Dex and Ryan Huff, our two co-chairs.
Thanks, Christos. And I guess You know, one of the things we run into when Matt gives the AASHTO update and Mish gives the FHWA update is our policy and rulemaking update kind of gets given for us. I mean, I do think that the discussion and quips, if you will, about the GHG final regs are, you know, we're in process on that. I mean, keep in mind the policy and rulemaking it's feast and famine. It seems that we're trying to coordinate a response to the rulemaking, and we were able to do that earlier. And again, appreciate the work FHWA has done with us in threading the needle, if you will, between working with us and following the statutory requirements they have to follow and when they go through rulemaking. As far as again, Matt kind of gave us a pretty good update on where we stand on other policy actions out there with the national performance measures, planning, assistance and research, asset management, and HSIP issues. So I don't believe anybody will have any questions, but I'll be glad to try to answer any if I have, if anybody has any. I know I do want to welcome Ryan to the policy and rulemaking, and we're going to have to get together and have some calls to kind of get us on the same page, because I know he's probably scratching his head a little bit on what this little group does. But anyway, welcome Ryan for sure.
Paul and Ryan and you know, all the volunteers that show up when we have something to work on, you know, probably that our workload is going to increase in the policy and rulemaking working group, because a lot of the work has been shouldered by Matt over the last few years, and I think Paul, probably you're gonna have to cover all of the things that Matt has been covering now. So
yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that for sure.
So
anyway, that's all I've got.
All right. Thank you, Paul and Ryan. So with that, I'm going to move with Gary Van Such from Colorado DOT and Organizational Management Subcommittee.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. Organizational Management's abbreviated OM. That's pronounced Many folks have said during the presentations today. We appreciate you invoking our subcommittee. Next. So our mission is in this space, development and implementation of organizational performance management processes, measures, improvement frameworks, and strategies. We are working to get that across all the 52 AASHTO organizations. Next. And in order to do that, sorry, this was cut off a bit. We're looking at the membership. We found that the membership previously, a fair number of folks were not active. So we are reaching out to see who wants to stay active and who doesn't. A quick request. There are 12 states that have actually indicated they want to stay active. The other states we are still, and DC and Puerto Rico also, we haven't heard from them. If your state is interested, please let me know and we'll get them engaged with the committee. Next. We have a work plan in several different pieces. Part of that is organizational management focused webinars. There's a lot of terrific webinars on asset management and other pieces of the overall committee here. For our subcommittee, we had a focus on that in the November session. We are working with our SPIPON partners to try to do something in May and or July. Be expecting more details on that. Next. We also have a terrific newsletter. Appreciate the newsletter. We are working to get some organizational management focused articles and updates into that newsletter too. You see the link there for the most recent newsletter from late last year. Next. We're also working on partnerships. We overlap quite a bit. I appreciate the keynote today. The kind of partnerships can help us with Moonshots. They can also help us with smaller efforts and organizational management subcommittees, trying to pursue some partnerships with the TRB committee, on workforce management and organizational excellence, the AASHTO Innovation Community of Practice, the AASHTO Innovation Initiative, the Transportation Lean Forum, and the Public Sector Change Practitioners Group, possibly for joint webinars as well as some other joint work. Next. In addition to those partnerships, we are the owner for the ACB portal. For those of you that don't know that, that was work of one of our working groups over the past few years. It's the agency capability portal. We've actually asked our SPIPON partners to start putting some trackers on that to see what kind of traffic we get and what we might be able to do to increase the traffic as well as to increase the usefulness of the information on the portal. Next. Additionally, back in the day, the subcommittee got involved with some of the AASHTO awards, particularly those pertaining to organizational excellence. You've probably seen the call for the most recent set of President's Awards. There actually is one on organizational excellence. There's one on environmental excellence and a few other things. And we are working to see whether the Organizational Management Subcommittee can be of assistance to that. Next. And one of the partnerships we have is with the Transportation Lean Forum. Our next session is actually next Wednesday. I think we've invited everybody here on the call. If not, I'll make sure that you're engaged. We're actually a community of practice. We're sharing some things that work and things that don't, ask each other questions. And it's part of the work that we're going to be having for the subcommittee to try to integrate that work into the efforts of the subcommittee. All right, I think that's the complete role. Is there one more, Christos? Probably not. I think that's it from for the subcommittee.
That is it.
All right, that's great. I'll turn it back to you, Christos.
All right, thank you, Gary. What we'll do, we'll take questions at the end of all of our updates. So next.
Bear with me just a minute. I need to pull up a separate slideshow.
This is the SMET slideshow next.
Yes, correct.
So we're going to move next to System Mobility and Emerging Technologies, Daniela Bremer, to give us the update. And again, remember that still looking for a vice chair for this group. Daniela, was all yours.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm letting Lori pull up the slide deck. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. And this is a quick update on the work of the System Mobility and Emerging Technologies joint subcommittee. Actually, not a task force, but that's just a maybe minor issue. But we are a subcommittee under. If you go to the next slide. Oh, that's the wrong deck. Okay, should I project mine right quick, Lori? Is that okay, or do you want to?
Sure, that's yep.
Okay, let's see how I get to do this here. Give me a second here, and I'm sorry about that. We had some technical glitches here, so let me know if you can see my deck, because at this point I cannot tell for sure what you're seeing. Can you see my deck?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so let's start this again.
It's not present. Hey, Daniela, if you can go to presentation mode.
Does it matter?
It's much smaller right now.
Oh, okay, can I do this here? I just here, there we go. Does that work for you?
Sure.
Okay. So basically, we are a joint subcommittee between two standing committees. So we are we have the Committee on Performance-Based Management and the Committee on Transportation System Operations are our sort of partner, our parent committees. And on the slide deck, you can see sort of the relationships. I'm a visual person. It's always nice for to show it exactly how it relates and how we embed it in the subcommittee work of the various standing committees. So we formed this some time ago in order to kind of meet very similar and very sort of aligned goals. And we had a performance-based committee, a data committee under CTSO. We had a similar committee on system mobility under performance-based management. And these goals and the membership individuals who participated seemed to be very similar. So we decided to create a joint subcommittee between the two standing committees to meet some of these goals. So I think you heard a little bit of conversation earlier about sort of the moonshot and where we'd like to go and what's happening and where we think we might need to be. This traditionally came out of this idea of performance assessment of like congestions analysis. So those of you who've been involved in congestion analysis in the past, probably been familiar with the subcommittee work that we did in the past, so the MAP 21 performance measure requirements, all of these conversations over time that Matt talked about earlier. And the last many years he worked with AASHTO and us developing and working with the federal partners on the MAP 21 metrics, especially for the congestion side, delay and reliability and all of those things are sort of typically what we used to do. Then we realized we need to branch out a little further and to look forward looking into more the emerging technologies. How do we incorporate the impacts of operational strategies and emerging technology strategies, and how do we measure that impact, and how do we communicate the performance of that? So that's a little bit where we expanded the scope of the committee and created a joint effort. So I'm going to talk quickly about a strategic planning process we're undertaking, because the work we're doing, when you talk about emerging technologies, you can understand that we don't always have a clear picture of that looks like. Sometimes we need a crystal ball to understand where we're going as DOTs and how we're embracing and what technologies might be applied. In other cases, it's clearer, but we wanted to understand a little bit better how we can meet the needs of our member state DOTs in these respective work efforts. And we want to be a little bit more strategic about how we leverage the volunteer time that we all have to, we all contribute to AASHTO and these related activities and committees. So we've been successful with Matt's help to get funding for a strategic planning and research roadmap development project that looks particularly at this joint subcommittee's future work and trying to develop a 5-year, I say 10 because we're realizing 10 might be too far out with emerging technology. So we're talking 5-10-year strategic plan, and then a 2-year very specific implementation plan that tells us what we should be working on. So we started this project last year, and even the short time that we started this project, we are already kind of bumping against changing environments and changing scenarios. And so trying to be flexible to that is kind of a challenge with the NCHRP project that is multi-year. So we're trying to figure out how do we respond to this. And digital infrastructure is a conversation we're having right now. The equity discussion, how do we measure it? What should the metrics be in terms of system performance, right? That's very important. That permeates a lot of the conversations. We heard about that earlier as well. And the reality that the automation is really has an interesting crossroads right now with so many companies closing or retreating, depending how you look at the world. And some of the technologies we expected to be here in 5 years or 10 years may not be here in 5 or 10 years. And so how do we as DOTs prepare for that? And how do we understand the impacts of those is kind of a little bit where we find a little bit of a challenge. And so that's the work we're doing. So we developed a survey with this sort of information in hand. We did sort of a scoping process, trying to understand what DOTs think is most urgent in this technology environment, deploying system performance and operational strategies. And so we did a survey and we got some really good responses. We pushed really hard as part of this, TSP and the subcommittees and work groups under this, as well as the CTSO groups. We got some really great response from DOTs. We had 87 responses, and those of you who have done surveys, you realize that's a really great response. And we had also some academia, local governments, federal governments, and some other private sectors. So to some degree, mostly state DOTs. And we're using this now to create a workshop, planning a workshop for early May, tentatively scheduled for May 2nd right now, to dig a little deeper into the response we got and what does it mean for developing a work plan and an action plan for the subcommittee. So that is sort of on the horizon. So we'll hear more about this. Interestingly, we were worried about the survey fatigue. We were worried about sending another survey out, as all of you are. People get surveys all the time, but people were, actually they were really willing to fill out a survey, but also more even willing to participate in this workshop, which was really interesting. So as much as people don't like to do surveys, they definitely said, yeah, I want to participate in this workshop. So you will hear more about how we're going to announce and broadcast this workshop, and hopefully many of you can participate. So look forward to that. And then just a call for, as my fellow committee co-chairs and vice chairs and chairs, we always look for members' participation. Rejuvenating the membership of our various subcommittees and working groups is always a #1 priority, and look forward to, please join us, participate if you can. We have some really interesting conversations, also very tangible conversations about how we can help and support the DOTs and the work they're doing. So our next meeting is on April 18th, and so feel free to join us. And then before I close my update here, I would be remiss not to mention that I really, really, really would love to have some nominations for self-nominations for the vice chair role. We're looking for an individual who's proactively looking at technology, understands what's happening on the national level, has some sense of what the DOT constraints are, but very much looking towards somebody who's really interested in this conversation and work with me on this committee. So with that, any questions for later, you can put them in the chat. I'm done with my update. Back to you, Lori. I guess I need to stop sharing, right?
If you want to
Thank you.
stop sharing.
Thank you, Daniela, and we'll let Lori switch over presentations. And we're going to go to Asset Management Subcommittee. Just one thing to mention about as we're looking for the vacancy, we really need someone who also understands mobility, because the subcommittee, it's not necessarily just about the technologies themselves, but really we need to be understanding the mobility aspect of it as well. So Matt, all yours.
Okay, thank you so much. So far I have always been the second Matt, the other Matt H. I guess I get to take the prime Matt role now, right? Or I don't know how that's going to work, but maybe I have to be promoted. We'll see.
You were always the prime Matt.
Yeah, right. I don't think so. But anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks all for being here. I just have a few very quick things to go over from the Subcommittee on Asset Management. First of all, want to welcome you all to join us in our monthly joint meetings that we have with our sister committee on the TRB side, the TRB Asset Management Committee, chaired by Meredith Hill from Maryland DOT. We'll have our next meeting. We're always the third Monday of the month at 1 p.m. So the next one will be April 17th. So check that out on your calendar if you're interested in asset management. It's a great opportunity to connect with the community. We also have our bi-monthly webinar series coming up. Next one is, well, I forgot the date, but anyway, if you go to the TAM portal, sorry, I don't have that here on the slide, but if you go to the TAM portal, look under events, the date of that next webinar will appear there. The main thing I wanted to kind of make sure to bring forward to you all here today is the 14th National Conference on Transportation Asset Management, which will be taking place in Boston, Massachusetts, July 8th through the 11th. That's just right around the corner. July seems like it's a long ways away, but really it's not. So I want to encourage you all to check out the conference website, which I'm just about to put in the chat here. There's the advanced program is posted there, details about all the events that are going to be going on. In addition to the main conference itself, there also will be some workshops and of particular importance to DOTs on the line here, as well as transit agencies. There will be both an AASHTO Federal Highway peer exchange for state agencies, as well as a FTA roundtable taking place in conjunction with this event, kind of on the weekend before. We'll also be having a meeting of our subcommittee in person taking place during this conference event. So if you're interested in getting more involved with AASHTO or learning more about participating in the Subcommittee on Asset Management, it's a great opportunity in addition to the other activities that I mentioned earlier. So those are the key updates that I have. I'd be happy to take any questions from anyone.
Matt, we're going to save the questions for everybody at the end.
Right, thank you.
So Next, we're gonna go to Kelly Travelby and the update from the Task Force on Emerging Performance Areas.
Good afternoon, Christos.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having us today. Can we go to the next slide?
So Kelly, your video's not on in case unless you were meaning not to show your video. I didn't know.
I'm not, I'm in travel status.
Okay.
So I'm hoping just to retain connection. So
Are you able to see the slides? I did pause momentarily to get to your section.
I did. Thanks, Lori. I appreciate you pulling that up.
Okay.
So the task force is still relatively new. I think we've been together since, I don't know, late summer, early fall of last year. We're looking at kind of the more broad societal goals. We're looking at how to improve state DOT's performance management programs by identifying kind of those new emerging performance areas. And especially those, one area of particular interest at the moment is the multimodal accessibility, looking at destination access, equity, resilience, greenhouse gas, and climate change impacts. I mean, obviously kind of all the big hitters that I think most states are in some level of discussion with and alignment with, you know, kind of the national conversation. So Lori, sorry, I don't have the presentation in front of me, so I'm sort of relying on you. Thank you. We are meeting monthly, and the team has been working on a work plan. I think we're moving along pretty well with that. Again, being a relatively new area, you know, we don't have necessarily the experience depth that SMET or asset management has, but we're, I think, progressing along pretty well. Would love to have more people kind of join our conversation on a monthly basis. You're welcome to reach out to Deanna or myself. And there's, I believe we are now getting our meetings corrected on the TAM portal. So we did submit 2 research problem statements last fall, and just last month we also submitted 2 synthesis proposals. So we're looking forward to seeing how those move forward. So again, we would love to have more people join us if you're interested. I mean, just stop by and hear the conversation, and hopefully there's something there that's going to be intriguing to you, and lots of opportunity for contribution. So thank you, Lori. I appreciate you moving through those for us.
Thank you, Kelly and Deanna, and thank you, Lori. So we're gonna move along before we get to questions for all of the different working groups. And we'll go to William Johnson in research. William, all yours.
And
I'm
I
here.
believe William is going to pull up his slides.
Can someone give me a confirmation you're seeing my slides?
Not yet.
Well, that's unfortunate.
No, we can see it. It's just not in presentation mode.
Okay, yeah, I'm not going to put it in presentation mode just yet because I need to switch back to a document.
Okay.
So I'll try to make it as wide as possible here and speak as quickly as possible. The research that we developed in calendar year 22 was for fiscal year 24. Now with these, I put 2 notes at the bottom. It's important for DOT members. There should still be time to reach out to your research directors. DOT ballots are due March 30th. The R&I committee will be meeting on April 13th and 14th to vet those. We have 5 research needs statements that came from this group. In them, I put down what the ballot number are, as well as the prioritization that you see there is the prioritization from the AASHTO committee on performance-based management. Covers much more than TPM, but I thought I'd let you know what it is. There's A10 that's incorporating risk management into maintenance practice, that is our highest priority research. There's A01, that's the Advancing Comprehensive Performance Measurement of Transportation Outcomes. A02, development of new performance measures for risk management. A05, that's the guide for linking performance measures, risk management, process improvement. And A15 is emerging technologies to capture, process, optimize asset inventory, condition data. Again, if you have time, contact your research directors, let them know what CPBM's priorities are, and see if we can up what our scores are. As mentioned by Kelly Travelby, a few synthesis statements were submitted in February. I have the list here. I believe that those get vetted around the same time. I'm really not sure, but here they are. As these things get selected and we understand where they are on the prioritization list, I'll come back to you and give another report out to that. Here is my committee, as well as the partners that we work with, just so you have that information, as well as a link to the TAM research portal. Now, something big coming up, and I noticed somebody had put the link in earlier. There's a research symposium next Monday. Hope you can all attend. An email was sent out earlier this month with, hey, subcommittee chairs, you have some responsibilities. We really need your help. And in that, I guess it's important to know, and here's where I switch back. Can you see the Word file now?
Yes.
Cool. There is out of this 2-hour meeting, an entire hour is devoted to the breakout groups. We have 5 different breakout groups that represent the different committees that CPBM has. And within those 5 breakout groups, we did give you just sort of a recommended order of operation within this. And that's where you see here this committee chair's action item. That is in the email. I did just send you another email reiterating, hey, here are the things that we recommend that you do with the hour in that. You're welcome to come up with something else, but I think at the end of it, we're really looking for 3 things. One is that you have a solid list of research needs statements that you can then take and do number 2, which is have a group of people who are volunteering to author these research needs statements and develop the full research needs statements, which leads to number 3 is report back to the group and say, hey, here's what we discussed, here's what we are moving forward with. That is the report out. So hopefully within that 1-hour time, you'll have plenty of time to go through this information. One question was asked is, hey, if we need Mentimeter, who's doing that? I've discussed with SpyPond, I've discussed with Matt while he was still at AASHTO, and there will be support within each of your breakout groups to stand up quickly a Mentimeter poll so that you're able to go through and, through that discussion, prioritize or do some initial vetting of those research needs topics. I know that there's going to be a lot of research topics that are put out. Unfortunately, not everything can be a priority. We're going to try to memorialize those discussions so that they're not lost, but also make sure that those really high priority things that we have a good game plan moving forward to implement. And implement meaning we have authors identified. I'm going to have another meeting with the people that you identified as authors. So please get their names and contact informations. I'm going to do here's how to write a research needs statement 101 for them. And we'll just go through everything together. And I think that concludes everything that I have. I'm going to stop sharing here and see if there's any questions. I'm going to check the chat.
Thank you, William. So actually what we'll do now, we'll take questions for all of the working groups if we have them.
If I may.
Go ahead, Edgardo.
Yeah, as I'm trying to help in making William really nervous with the classification of these research needs statements, let me just give everybody a heads up. So when we do a search on the existing research, the committee chairs can digest that and hopefully they understand what's in those reports. I don't have the time to read them. So if there's a risk implementation of the AASHTO guide for enterprise risk management is is a report that's available. And also some areas tend to have ideas that came out of the TRB meetings that seem to overlap a little bit, or there aren't that many. So on the SMET committee, there aren't that many research needs statements that fit in that category. So part of the breakout can be trying to add some or to elicit some at the breakout, whereas in other areas it's all about cutting down 15 different ideas that people have into a manageable number. That's what it's looking like. So that's the charge for the committee chairs, the subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Edgardo. Any questions? Let me check the chat as well. Lori has shared the information with everybody on the projects. So if we do not have any additional questions, I'm going to turn it over to our secretary, Karen Miller, to recap our action items. Karen?
So just a reminder, sign up for the research symposium if you have not already registered for that, as it is happening on Monday. Put September 11 through 13 on your calendar for the annual Committee on Performance-Based meeting, along with the peer exchange in Denver. Excuse me. I encourage everyone to participate. Just a second. It takes talent to breathe and talk.
I hope
at the
you're not
same
getting
time.
choked up over Matt's departure.
I'm trying to breathe and talk at the same time. Anyone from your organization can participate in any of these AASHTO subcommittee work groups or task force. And I encourage everyone to find someone to just attend one, kind of figure out how it works. You're welcome to just say, hey, I'm interested. Let me know, let Christos know. And we'll get you hooked up with those particular committees. You gain a lot of information, and the networking possibilities are out of this world. And then if you have not yet signed up for the TSP, the technical service program, which is what the pooled fund transitioned to, then I encourage you to do that as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Karen. And as we wrap up, we see the notes here relative to one of the most important websites that everybody should have bookmarked and know exactly by heart how to find it. Of course, is the TPM portal. All of these, it's going to be available there. So as we conclude our program for today, I want to thank Kirk Steudle and John Kaliski for their presentation on the Moonshot NCHRP project, to all of our attendees and to Spy Point partners, and especially Lori Richter for their work to bring this webinar to us today. Big thank you to our Federal Highway partners for their continued support and partnership, and to our subcommittee and task force leads for all the great work that you continue to do. Remember that all the notes are going to be posted, and I hope that you join us tomorrow for TPM webinar number 16, Innovations in Caltrans Performance Management Framework, from 1 to 3:30. We apologize for the confluence of webinars at the same time, but some of them needed to be moved due to conflicts, sharing is caring, so we are sharing more than less. So also want to recognize King G, who's here today, who's attending the webinar for us today from AASHTO. Thanks everybody, but more importantly, thank you to Dr. Harty for a great 13-year run with us, and no one could have done more than what you have done for this transportation performance management family. We know you're not going away, just changing hats, and that you always be part of this family. So have a great rest of your day, everyone, and looking forward to seeing you on Monday, if not tomorrow.